Since he was elected, not a single time has he said anything about the domains, and the things that he was assigning and promoting is the complete opposite of what you would not of what I didn't expect anyway, but it's the opposite of what he was promising. For example, they were talking about like giving land, but now they're talking about giving land for a payment, and not 1 hectare, but 1/4 of a hectare. So, and when you have 1/4 of a hectare, it's already not the right sum. Again, for this reason, I do not rely on the government or any powers. I just prefer to go and do it myself.
So when the story comes that so many people think that Anastasia started setting up the king's domain and growing the vegetables, and he ended up being more production than the commercial.
Well, already the Russian gardeners, they produce more. The Russian gardeners, the Dachniks, they already produce more than commercial agriculture put together.
So all the people that actually bought the land.
The ones, you can't get for free relatively easily. Thank you. A small plot of land, like 1/10 of an acre. But it's small. It's maybe 2 times the size of this room for like an allotment for a vegetable garden. You can build a small home there, but it won't be real domain. You will have neighbors too close together. So it's still not there. But many people, just as the person here built himself a home, no matter what the building ordinances say. In Russia, some people went and they took the land. They didn't buy the land, they took the land, they put the stakes into the ground and said, we are Russians, this is Russia. The Constitution says we can have land for free. We realized our constitutional right of taking ourselves the land for free, and we do not recognize any absentee landowners. They don't use this land anyway. They use it for speculation or for investing their money. They don't need this land, we need it. And if you want us to be removed from the land, you need to send police force, but we will be defending ourselves with their forks and with their axes. And there are some communities, like hundreds of families, who did just that. They went, loved the piece of land, settled there, built their homes. 2 years later, the legal owner arrived and sees that instead of his abandoned agricultural land, there is already a community. And for the most part, these communities are still out there, because politically it's difficult to bulldoze down 100 homes and make people homeless, and also the land was not used anyway, so it works out for them. But the amount of pressure that it puts on them, knowing that the maybe police coming and you need to have your fork close to your bed all the time. Psychically, this is not something I would want to experience. For me, it's easy to say to the system, okay, I bow down to you to do what the system recognizes, so that at least it would leave me alone more, rather than be the constant confrontation. But it's really also everybody's personal stuff.
I think it is pushing us to just make the choice and just change the system by not.
Yeah, and again, what you're saying is so right, because this is not something you can really do on your own. The beauty of the community, if you alone went and put the stakes into the ground and said, this is my land, they would certainly send a few cops and you will be gone and they will put on it. But when there are already 100 families who did that, and 100 families here, and 100 families here, and 100 families there, then it's already not that easy.
Have you been in contact with John Harris? Here he's been explaining a lot of people about local rebellion and how not to get into the system by the
I know about his work, but I have not been in touch with him.
Very nice. Just so we can get it happen to it's happening.
I just want to bring it back to the kind of polarization you mentioned between kind of political activism and the inner work that we need to do, and just kind of ask whether actually it's about us kind of bringing that place of love to those people working in activism, because actually it strikes me that actually we're not going to, none of us will be able to bring about the changes that we want to see and to create these peaceful communities unless the lobby government creates a policy space that actually makes it possible. At the beginning of saying, like, planning commission, there are so many obstacles in our way. And absolutely the way that we see activism now, so it comes from such an angry place. But if we can model, the place world that we're all coming from, and I think that activism has to play a part in it. And we all need to be aware of the kind of structures that are getting in the way of what we're doing. Without that awareness, then there can be a certain naivety to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I actually agree. What I'm trying to say is, your comment is excellent about the activism coming from the space of love rather than from the space of hatred. But another one, for me, it's like striking a balance. I'm not saying that activism is useful. I respect Vladimir Megrev for what he is doing on the political arena, but this is not something that I would choose to do with my life. I feel that there needs to be a balance. I have seen very many people who are so involved in saving the planet that they neglect saving their own family. Like, their children are being offended, their religion. So, I'll give you one example. I worked as a manager at World Wildlife Fund. We are saving the environment for you. And I was once riding in a car with a director of one of Russia's largest non-profit conservation organizations. So this director of this large Russian non-profit organization was smoking a cigarette, which is fine. When he finished smoking his cigarette, he rolled down the window and threw out the butt. To me, it was this example of somebody who is saving it for you, who is active, but who neglects this personal dimension. In the second book, it's very well described. We should be standing firmly on two legs: the material world, and need to be doing what is needed in the material world, and the spiritual dimension. If we neglect one or do one at the expense of the other, then we are like a blind person. So
I think that can get quite, if you get too much into the dark stuff and the political fight, it really starts kind of poisoning the blood and it can kind of take over from that sort of side. As an example, just like your one, was Brian Hall, the guy who sits outside Parliament and has done for the last 7 years or something, protesting against the Iraq War and the children being killed. Amazing guy, totally inspirational. So he's got 6 kids at home and a wife that's now left him and taking the kids to go because he can't afford to support them or her or anything else, and the kids are missing their dad. And he's doing something really important, but it's really hard to decide which way to put the energy.
My approach is, when you start seeing yourself not just as your own body that will be gone after a few decades, when you see yourself as part of the family tree, then you start seeing that if you do something for your family first, then it means you, your partner, and your children in this generation. But if you create a lifestyle and if you inspire your children to continue doing what you are doing, then this means that you have changed the life of, say, if you have 2 children, but they might have 2 children of their own age. This would mean 4 grandchildren, and then 8 and 16 and 32, etc. So it will be growing like that. So if you are, in addition to saving or doing what you need to save the world, if you are taking good care of your family and doing it for your children, you are not being egoistic. You are at the same time changing lives of millions of people who will come after you. It just spread out in time, but to me this is the best I can do. I try doing many things, but I try not to neglect my family for sure.
I'm just really loving what you're saying. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about saving. It's probably on the DVD, but in one of the things we're thinking about in terms of in the community is like having your own gardens, but then what about things like wheat and all these other grains, like you do that, you need to have like community kind of gardening or spot or kind of agricultural.
Communities, they're just at the very beginning. So nobody's yet growing these more technical crops. But from my knowledge of how it worked 100 years ago even, the point was not with the amount of labor that is needed to grow flax or to grow your wheat, but with the question who you grow it for.